much in every teaching and every appointment that I have with any of my clients or patients. The transitional pause. And it's really a moment to settle into the body and do a short practice. You don't need to make a big deal of it, but really finding your body, putting your body into a position that's kind of a mixture of being both alert and relaxed. And if it's helpful, closing the eyes. And beginning to allow your awareness to be turned towards the body. And just seeing initially the impact of the day on your body right now. So this may be even noticing, oh, I'm quite tired, or restless, or hungry. Just allowing yourself the experience of arriving from wherever you've come from today, the activities that your mind has been busy with, and the places that your body has been. And then say, just here, just now, let me feel what it's like to be in this room, in this space, on this call. Perhaps noticing a few breaths. Sensations of the clothes against your skin, temperature, pressure. And then taking a moment to orient the mind to your intention for this session, this time that you're spending on a webinar. What's important to you? What is your motivation or intention around this topic of mindfulness or neuroscience, self-development? And remembering intentions are not set in stone, but rather providing a bit of a guiding compass, or an arrow towards how we would like things to be, what we need. So as to help us keep on track, but also notice when we're going off track. Just setting that intention now. And then finishing with 3 breaths. Opening the eyes. So I'm using this exercise, as I said, really in most of my consultations and as I'm trying to go about my work and my daily life. It doesn't have to be an elaborate exercise. It can be very quick, just 3 breaths in each of the different sections. But it starts to develop a habit and a practice of understanding that the mind can be in the past, the mind can be here and now in the present, and we can set our intentions for the future. But it hasn't yet happened yet. And doing this can be extremely helpful, particularly allowing us to acknowledge the impact of things from the past on the here and now, without necessarily carrying them on into the future. And that really is at the heart of what I see happens in a mindfulness practice, and as mindfulness develops, it's the observation of how our mind and our mental habits are affecting us in the here and now, recognizing that they may well come from the past, they may well be older habits that we developed years or decades ago. And then this choice, do I want to take this into the future? Is this the mind that I want to use to make future decisions? And really doing a bit of an audit of the mental habits, keeping the ones that are helpful and getting rid of the ones that are not, or trying to dissolve them, let's say. So when we're doing a mindfulness practice, one of the targets of our focused attention is often the breath, and certainly breath is really a key meditation object across a whole wealth of contemplative and body traditions, actually. And there's a reason why people like to work with the breath, and particularly in the early stages of any kind of meditation or spiritual practice, and that's because the breath can only be in the present moment. And if we understand that a key task when we're meditating or when we're trying to become mindful is to hold our attention and keep our awareness on the present moment. And so present moment awareness is often part of many of the definitions, the modern secular definitions of mindfulness. And the one I work with most often is the one from Jon Kabat-Zinn, who suggests that mindfulness is a type of awareness that arises when we learn how to pay attention to the present moment without judgment and on purpose. So quite a dense definition there, paying attention on purpose, moment by moment, without judgment. This is not the same as relaxation, even though sometimes we can have a sense of relief and feel relaxed when we learn to manage our minds. We've got there through a very active process of learning how to pay attention to the present moment. And this is actually more difficult than it sounds, because our minds do have this tendency, and often strong habits, to go back to the past and to wander off into the future. So when we begin mindfulness training, and quite a kind of formal mindfulness training, we often use the breath to help us anchor our attention to the present moment. And the reason the breath works well for this task is because it's not possible to take a breath from 5 minutes ago, and it's not possible to attend to a breath from 5 minutes ago. It's gone. The next breath is there, and the next one, and the next one. So if you bring your attention to the breath, and you're able to hold and maintain the focus of your attention on the breath as it travels in and out of your nostrils, or you feel it moving in and out of your rib cage, you are here and now. I'm trying to capture that a little bit on this model here, which is the beginnings of the model that we're going to talk about for the rest of this evening. This idea that we set our intention to attend to the breath. I'm going to get a little marker here and see if I can use that. We set our intention to attend to the breath, deliberately intending and choosing to make this the object of our attention. And then maybe 1 second or half a second later, we are actually doing something else, which is not breath. Likely our minds have wandered to the past or the future, or some sort of mental activity that's become much more interesting and compelling to our attention system rather than this boring old breath over here. But there is a moment that we realize, oh, this is not breath. I'm no longer attending to breath. I'm not doing the thing that I thought I was doing. And it's right here that we have a choice. This is the moment where we kind of pop out of being lost in thought and mind wandering and say, oh, hang on a minute, this is my mind wandering, and I was meant to be over here where the breath was going in and out. Here's the breath going in and out. I was here, and then I got caught up in this mind wandering. So here is the moment of awareness where we kind of go, oh, this is not breath, and let me get back to the breath. And, you know, this cycle continues endlessly, and depending on your state of mind and your state of body, your emotional state, your breath might have certain different characteristics. The way that your mind is lost in this kind of not breath experience of the mind wandering could be pleasant, could be extremely unpleasant. And your capacity to be aware and really hold firm that intention to be present, especially if the present moment is difficult, or especially if the mind wandering is either very interesting or very distressing and requiring you to manage it, then actually this movement around this cycle of a mindful moment may have some different kinds of characteristics. And of course, this is one of the reasons why we practice, so that we can get to learn about these characteristics. And so, you know, mindfulness of the breath is not some sort of magical blissed out place where you're fully inside the breath and there's no thoughts. Now, if you're a very experienced practitioner, you might be getting to that. But for your average beginner, you know, the experience is 30 seconds on the breath, 2 minutes with mind wandering, noticing, attempting to come back, and then maybe not even maybe getting back in the early stages. So I use this model when I'm working with my clients and really show them the pictures and show them the diagram. And really what they say when they see this is that it's actually helpful to understand that you're going to be moving through this cycle many, many, many times and under lots of different sorts of conditions. But the highlights, again, picking an object, and ideally one that is in the present moment, just to really help you spot the tendencies of the mind to move to the future and the past. But working with the breath is a good one. I like to work with the moving body myself, is my personal preference. Noticing that then you're not on the breath and then choosing to come back. So we're going to be looking at this as we go through the presentation this evening. So excuse me, I'm just learning how to use some of these tools. And so sometimes what happens, particularly with a breathing exercise, is that we get lost thinking about the breath. And this is something which is referred to as task-related mind wandering. And it's distinct from mind wandering that is about something else other than the task. And I found this framework, which comes from some of Smallwood's research, to be extremely helpful as a way to quite quickly give a quick category to the ways in which my mind has wandered. And when I started doing this, what I noticed was how much of the mind wandering is thinking about the object that I'm supposed to be attending to, or sometimes even thinking about the meditation that I'm doing and saying, oh, this is really great, I should do more of this seated meditation practices and not just Tai Chi. So it might be thinking about the breath, which is the object of the mindfulness. Sometimes it's even thinking about the mindfulness and planning to do mindfulness in the future. Or it might be thinking about something else entirely. And as we come to the neuroscience, you'll be able to understand why it is that sometimes under that category number 2, thinking about something else entirely, we often experience memories. Because actually when we're in this space of the mind, one of the regions that's involved in this network is the hippocampus, where our memories are stored and laid down. So when we start working with the neurocognitive model, we're able to make sense a little bit of some of the experiences that are very commonly met when we are, lost in the space of the mind or deliberately moving around and playing in the space of the mind. Very often we do find memories in that space. And there's a sort of solid neuroscientific reason for that, which we'll get to shortly. But I do just want to point out, number 1, this thinking about the breath. It's quite helpful to spot if you're doing that, because for some people, when they become aware that they're thinking about the breath and trying to focus on it at the same time, they can get into a little bit of a panic. So these are thoughts such as, am I breathing in and out? How long is my breath? Oh my goodness, I'm not breathing. Or my breathing's really shallow, or my breathing's really deep. Different kind of commentaries about the breath, but then the mind very quickly wants to kind of analyze this and get busy with it and start thinking, well, is that good? Is it bad? Am I breathing? Am I not breathing? Oh no, what's happening? And this can create some kind of negative thinking loops that of course do then begin to impact on the breath, which will then start to change, and this can trigger a slight panic attack, and this is more common than people might think. So often people do say, if you're giving a talk to large numbers of people in a room, there'll definitely be at least 3 or 4, say, out of 20 who might have some kind of slightly panicky thoughts about the breath. And just to say, it's okay, thoughts are not facts, but if you can categorize that quite quickly as task-related mind wandering, that might then be helpful for you to just disengage from that, notice, okay, not only is that not breath, that's actually thinking about breath, task-related mind wandering. That's not the task. The task is to attend to the breath. And so when we're talking about attending to the breath, we are talking about harnessing and engaging our attentional systems. And there's quite a lot known from the neuroscience about our attention networks in our brain. And often the metaphor of the spotlight is used. So there's a sense that we have this spotlight, the spotlight can move around, and that there's somebody controlling the spotlight. We have the capacity to voluntarily harness our focused attention and choose where to put the spotlight of attention. And so in the example that I've just given, the breath is the object that we choose to focus the lens of attention on. And then, as I've said, the rationale for that is because the breath is always in the present moment. Yeah, you cannot attend to the breath from 5 minutes ago. It's physiologically impossible for you to attend to a breath that you haven't yet had. So if you gather your attention and you bring it to the breath, and you manage to get through any potentially panicky thoughts about am I breathing or am I not breathing, particularly if you're a beginner, you can be sure that your mind is in the present moment. And it also means that you may be much more quickly able to detect moments when you're not present. Yeah, so perhaps the mind has gone off into the future, perhaps the mind has gone back to the past. And in both those scenarios, your attention has left the present moment and you may be lost in different sorts of mind-wandering experiences. And the title of the talk today is, the joys and pains of the wandering mind. And really to be clear that, there's nothing wrong with having a wandering mind. There's nothing wrong with having a mind that goes back to the past or forward into the future. And actually this capacity that we have to mentally time travel is something that seems to have been really important in allowing us to become the dominant species and actually do all these wonderful things that humans can do. But like anything, it is a bit of a double-edged sword, and actually what we're discovering in our modern environment is some of the great capacities and things that our brain did to help us can also sometimes turn against us. And as we go through, we'll kind of be giving some examples of what this looks like. But, at the very least, we understand that what happens when people are depressed and they have a low mood that they can't get out of is that the focus of their internal attention has become very much fixated on the past. So they're going over events that have happened from the past. They're unable to let go of previous hurts and disappointments often. And actually what perpetuates the low mood is getting stuck in the so-called ruminative cycles of thinking and negative thinking and wishing that things had been different and regretting. And so we know that mindfulness training, particularly in the form of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which was developed at Oxford University, is a training that really can help people who are prone to getting pulled into these patterns of depressive thinking, which only really serve to keep them stuck for longer and longer. Mindfulness helps to see those patterns arising and trains the attentional muscle in a way that people can disengage from that thinking and come back to focusing on the breath. The breath is here and now. The body is here and now. This thought about all the things that have happened or all the things that you got wrong or the ways that you were disappointed or you let others disappoint you, this is not real. These thoughts are not facts. Yeah, the experience of them now feels like they're very real and that it's all happening, but actually in that moment, they're just thoughts. And so this can be very powerful, and I think what the research is telling us, certainly coming from Exeter University and Oxford University, is that it is possible for people to gain some liberation and freedom from this type of negative thinking. It doesn't stop them ever being sad. It doesn't stop them from, ever having a low mood again. But what it does seem to prevent is relapse into these very deep and dark and prolonged periods of depression. And for anybody that's suffered, for decades, perhaps, this is pretty good news. So the key point here is that, we want to have a present moment awareness, and we get to that by focusing our attention on the present moment. And then we use objects such as the breath and the body and movement, or perhaps external objects like candles or stones, or some people might be using mantras, to help hold us in the present moment. And within that, then be much better able to detect when we're not in the present moment anymore. And, where are we? Well, even just trying to focus on the breath for a few seconds, you perhaps would have discovered that, very quickly the mind wanders and it goes all over the place. And it has a capacity to kind of pull us into a world that's different from the embodied world in which we live in. And again, we all have individual differences. Some people have very high levels of kind of imagination, and the internal worlds that they create and they can go and explore and get lost in or play in are very rich and detailed, and may almost seem like the real world. And perhaps in some extreme cases, this can be a problem because they do feel that this is the real world when it isn't. But that sometimes that can have a positive flavor, sometimes that can have a negative flavor, and I suppose this is kind of what we're interested in, particularly learning some of the habits and the patterns, so we can nip them in the bud. Particularly if we've got some mental habits and patterns that we've brought with us from when we were growing up, from when we were kids, from our developmental history, that may not be working for us anymore. Yes, and this is often what brings people to therapy, to coaching, to self-development books, to webinars like this. Is people have this inkling, or sometimes it might be really smacking you in the face. Some of my mental habits, my emotional reactive habits, are not working for me anymore. They're getting me into trouble at work, or I'm having arguments with my families and friends, or I'm feeling dissatisfied and I just can't get out of this slump. This is the time to say, okay, let's do a little bit of spring cleaning, a bit of an audit of some of the things that this mind is doing that's driving a lot of my decisions completely without my awareness. And so by training our attention to be able to hold the focus of attention on the present moment, initially with nice, solid, concrete objects like our body and our breath, and then later with this more slippery content of the mind and the processes of the mind, this is the way that we'll be able to take a good look, a very clear and detailed, interested, curious look at what our minds are doing. And we're actually learning at this point. So we'll get onto this in a little bit more detail later on, but when we're learning, it's not helpful to be judgmental. We want to provide the optimum learning conditions for ourselves. So even when we see habits of mind that we just think, oh my goodness, what am I doing to myself? I'm doing that to myself. It's quite a hard moment, actually, when you get to that point and you look at your mind and you think, wow, this actually is suffering that I am creating for myself. This is a hard moment sometimes when we meet ourselves and our minds doing things that are not skillful, not kind to ourselves, maybe not kind to other people. But if we have a genuine intention, a really genuine intention that we want to grow and develop, a real strong commitment to that, then mindfulness to say, okay, let me see it for years. I really need to get a good look at this habit, and that may mean I need to let it play out over and over again. The really deep ones, you're going to see them time and time again. They don't just magically disappear, and it's because they are entrained in your neural networks. That's why we just can't think our way out of them. We have to watch them and observe them, and over time learn to pull back from them earlier and earlier, because we know their signature with more and more detail. And when we can do that, then we are starting to transform our mind with mindfulness. But, the very first task, which I thought was captured quite nicely with this cartoon, you are here, but your mind is somewhere else. And, really, if this is the only thing that you take away from this webinar, this is really the crux of it. Are your body and mind in the same place? And a little spelling mistake there, so never mind. So this is the question to ask, really. Are my body and my mind in the same place? And how often is that? And, for those that are working, often what we may find is, my body's at home, but my mind is at work. And this is something that people very commonly report on. The other version of that is, well, my body's at work, but my mind is at home, perhaps because there's problems with the kids or a partner or a neighbor or the washing machine flooding or worries about finances or relatives, elderly relatives, all of these things of life. Of course, it's normal, it's natural that those things would be on our minds. But if we're trying to get through some tasks at work, or we're wanting to work efficiently so that we can get home and attend to the things that really are important to us, then having some traction with what your mind is doing and how your mind is moving and the ways in which you're either voluntarily choosing where to put the spotlight of attention, or how it's getting hijacked by emotions often, emotions and worries and fears, hijacking the attentional system, pulling you into this, non-real world that actually feels very compelling, which is the thinking about. And trying to capture in this slide here, it is more complex than this, of course, but actually, there are some kind of quite reliable ways in which the mind moves. And again, if you're an experienced practitioner, of course, you'll see that this is kind of quite a simplification, but I find that it is really helpful for people who are just starting out, because jumping into the space of the mind and instructions to just focus on the breath, actually it's tough. And particularly if you're doing these practices maybe without a teacher, you've just picked up an app or a book or an audio recording, my sense is it is helpful for people to have a little bit of a scaffold and a bit of a framework to help them understand what they might come across, what are some of the ways in which, fairly reliably the mind will move in some of these directions, and then go in and experiment for yourself. And actually that's really the premise of the book that I'm working on now, which will come out next year, which is called #WhatIsMindfulness. It's really kind of presenting some of the things I'm sharing with you today as a bit of a guide to, well, what can I expect, and what is all this stuff about mindfulness, and is a coloring book the same as doing an 8-week course, and am I going to have all these amazing changes in my brain from doing an app? Lots of confusion out there. But I hope by the end of today's presentation, you'll have a really clear idea of actually this is what is involved. And the only thing that I need to decide is, how far do I want to go with this? How much time and effort am I willing to put into this? What's important to me? And do I want to get to grips with this mind of mine so that I can harness all the amazing resource that is our brain, actually. And maybe this is really what drives my work is, our brains and our minds are such incredible instruments. And it's painful to watch how they're being abused and misused in a way that we're not even aware of. And how could we be, actually, because it kind of happened quite slowly and it wasn't in full awareness. But, we really know now that even though the technology that we use is brilliant and amazing and allows me to share with you now this knowledge, actually it has come at a cost. And part of that cost is we're less connected to our bodies, we're very easily distracted, our attention systems are a little bit shot, our frontal lobes are really floppy, and actually even when we just try to watch the breath for 3 breaths in and out, can we do it? No, it's really tough. And, my passion then really is about helping people to think about what they're doing in their day-to-day life and try to make even some small changes that will allow them to be more present, more connected to their bodies, less preoccupied perhaps with heads in screens and mindless zoning out in front of Netflix or whatever it is, and saying, how do I want to use this mind? How do I want to use this energy? What is it that I want to contribute to this planet and this life with my time that I've got here? And really being able to choose, how to live this life. And so I've got here on this slide showing 3 really key ways that the mind can wander, and we've talked a little bit about how may be related to some common mental health experiences that most people will have at some point in their life, feeling a bit sad, feeling a bit anxious, all the way up to having an anxiety disorder or something that needs medication, or at the other end, having a long-standing depressive illness. And really to be clear that in a mindfulness perspective, these are considered to be normal human reactions that just perhaps have got a bit out of control because certain conditions and circumstances in the mind and brain meant that this type of thinking was allowed to take over. So, you know, it's great that we have the capacity to use our brains to go back to the past and reflect on things that have happened. It's crucial to our learning that we're able to do this. So our brains as primates and humans evolved in a way that was different from the other animals, and it allowed us to have a sort of workspace of the mind where we could bring up our memories, lay them out, as it were, and kind of look through them and sort through them in order to extract any learning, so that when we did things in the future, we could be more efficient, we could learn from mistakes, we wouldn't make the same mistakes twice. So brilliant. Yeah, capacity to go back to the past, capacity to reflect, to bring up memories, and they might be very visual memories, they might be more words. Really great capacity, and we absolutely don't want to get rid of that. But where this can get out of hand a bit is if we are stuck. If we're stuck in the past with this, you know, I call it this mental monkey, his chatter sort of starts with the if only. Yeah, but it's not a kind of happy if only, it's a if only that's really saying my life now is really not good because if only this had happened, then I would be happy. If only I'd done that or said that or chosen that or not done that, then something would be different in my life now. And there's this quality there of something in the here and now is not nice, not pleasant, and it may well be grief or sadness or loneliness. And the mind is trying to manage that by kind of going back to the past and trying to figure out, well, why do I feel like this? Oh, well, if only I'd have done that, then I wouldn't feel like this. So this is when that capacity to reflect and think about things is kind of hijacked in the service of an emotion. And this can, when it's excessive, lead to very low mood and depression. We also have this capacity to time travel to the future. So this, I call this the what if monkey. You know, and this is the monkey that allows us to project into the future, to rehearse different scenarios and think about where we might want to take our holidays, or what would it be like if I went camping, or if I went hiking, or should I go to a beach holiday. Project into the future, and again, bring out onto this workbench of the mind things that haven't yet happened, but them and test them out. And it might be something as basic as maybe planning a route, how you're going to get somewhere driving the car, or it could be something at a much bigger level. How, you know, how am I going to live my life? What if, you know, I can be the person that I want to be? What if it's possible for me to do X or Y, the thing that I always dreamed of? And so this is then a future projection, and it has this more sort of positive or hopeful tone to it. But the what if monkey can sometimes have this jacket of doom around it, which is the kind of, oh, what if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not likable? What if I'm not X, Y, or Z? Or what if they think this is stupid? What if they don't understand it? You know, this what if function then is hijacked sometimes, and the projections are of a more negative tone and have consequences that are deemed to be threatening to the. And about social rejection, it seems to be that's kind of something that's particularly poignant in this network, and we'll see in a short while why that's the case, because this is the network that developed really in order to help us live together in large social groups so that we could have the benefits that that brought in terms of allowing us to create and design tools and build houses and communities and agriculture and all the things that flowed. The social brain hypothesis, as it's called, suggests that this really was the driver. It was the capacity to live in large social groups, which required us to kind of make sense of how other people might be thinking about us. But then this goes really wrong when we start getting worried, well, what if I'm rejected from the group? What if I'm not socially accepted? What if people don't like me? What if? And this can be very distressing. It can really preoccupy the mind. Anybody that's experienced sort of, you know, a little bit of anxiety streams. And this then might be something like a social anxiety problem. But again, we don't want to get rid of that function. It serves us very well some of the time. It's just knowing when it's getting activated and learning its signature, particularly when it's getting activated automatically. Yeah, so this is where the mindfulness helps us. We want to watch the habit, we want to see it getting activated, and then really study what was going on, what was in my body when that came, what was I feeling in my heart, in my chest, in my torso, where was I, what were the things that were going on around me, how did this experience arise in the mind? And turning the lens of attention onto that, we get more detail. You know, when we pay attention, we wait, we watch, we observe, we receive the sensory information, greater and greater richness and detail emerges. And it's the same if we do that for our hand, the breath, or eventually, when we have a bit more skills, our thoughts and our mental patterns. So the other thing that this mind can do, which is, again, really amazing, is this as-if function. Yeah, so we've had if only, going a bit more to the past, what if, this slightly more future-oriented, and then the as-if function. And this really is the creative mind. And, you know, this is what you're using if you're with your child and you hold a banana to your ear and then you pass it to the child and say, it's for you. Yeah, it's pretend, it's play, it's kind of as if the banana is a telephone, but you both know that it's not a telephone, it is really a banana, but this is a hilarious joke if you've got a young child, and I still find it funny myself. You know, so this is the as if function. It's where you're able to kind of play and imagine and create and substitute and mix things all around. And it's the place of kind of metaphor and play and pretense. And really is a key part of our social skills set, actually, this ability to work out as well as if the other person is thinking that, having a model of what's going on. It's not always exactly 100% correct in detail, but it's a good, quick guess that allows us to understand and interact with other people. So these are, broadly speaking, again, just some high-level categories of different ways that the mind might move and how it might move away from the present moment. And then, as I said, particularly we're talking about a present moment where we're choosing to focus on a particular object. And broadly speaking, there are focused attention practices and then this slightly more open monitoring practice. For most people, they start with a focused attention practice, and that's really to build the muscle and get the attention network familiar, really become familiar with the attention network, actually, in the way that we're distracted and pulled and the different movements. We need to do this basic training before we then jump into the more slippery realm of mind and habits. But not everybody goes that way, and that's fine, and there's loads of options and loads of traditions and lots of different practices. But in my experience, I think the focused attention practices, and particularly the ones that have been developed within the secular mindfulness training, they're really needed. And exactly because our attention system is highly compromised by our modern technology lifestyles. You know, there's any number of videos and clips and things on YouTube about multitasking, something that was once seen as a very key skill, and you put it on your CV, great multitasker. You know, now actually we're understanding that multitasking may not really be the most effective way, and also it's just so much more information is available to us through technology and the internet nowadays that our brains just can't cope. So really the research seems to be suggesting that multitasking is, you know, takes longer, it's more stressful, and you're more likely to make mistakes. Now, having said that, you know, any mother out there will say that she wouldn't be able to get anything done if she didn't multitask. And of course, there are many things that we can do simultaneously because it just doesn't matter so much if we're not paying attention. But there are a few things where it is dangerous and unhelpful to multitask. And, you know, one of them is if you're doing something that might be dangerous or novel or new. So driving and texting is multitasking, and you're doing neither of them fully, and this is dangerous and problematic, and it's right that we have some rules and regulations about that. And the other place, which I think is where quite a few people are struggling, is how not to multitask in conversation and when you're in relationships with others. So, you know, really I would suggest, and I often am suggesting to people, just notice You're in a conversation with somebody, you're talking to them, and you hear your phone ring in your bag, or your phone is in your pocket and it vibrates or it rings. Just notice what happens to your mind. Yeah, it's such an interesting exercise. I even encourage my students to do this kind of slow motion phone answering technique, because slowing down the movement, they immediately noticed that they were automatically reaching for their phone. You know, some of them are noticing and catching themselves as they're about to do it, but they still see that the impulse to answer the phone is so strong. And the conditioning that we have to these objects can be quite significant. So, you know, that a strong invitation, if you're talking to somebody, if you're in a conversation with somebody, you know, just don't even have your phone out or on or within eyesight. You know, no phones on the table. I know parents are struggling with this, asking their kids to not have their phones at the dinner table. It's like ripping their arms off, you know. They get quite distressed, but this is what we're dealing with. Yeah. So actually starting with a focused attention training is a good idea, but just to say there are lots of other options, and maybe others might be more appealing to you. So when we go into this question of evolving our minds through a process of dissolving old habits that we see clearly through mindfulness are no longer helping us, what is it that we're really doing, actually? And I like this phrase, which comes from a teacher who I really like, Alan Wallace. Some of you may have come across his work. He has a book called The Attention Revolution, which is a really nice book that details the 10 stages of the shamatha training. So it's a Tibetan Buddhist training, but a very detailed and specific attention training pathway. Just really detailed, really specific, a level of detail that's beyond actually our Western scientific psychological constructs of attention, even though those are evolving. But really detailed information about the different ways and conditions under which the mind moves. And, you know, for the beginner, for the purposes of this talk, you kind of need to understand that there's two main categories to be on the lookout for. One is, did I choose to move my attention, or did something capture it, or was it dragged away? Yeah, this idea of, was it voluntary? Did I choose where to put the spotlight of attention, or did something else happen? And the Buddhists were not the only ones to be interested in this question. Some of the early philosophers of ancient Greek and Roman times, and particularly Seneca and some others, also used really the same language and the same exercises in their more philosophical investigations of mind. And just a little bit of a myth bust here, you know, lots of people are curious or asking, you know, does mindfulness come from Buddhism? Is it Buddhism? Am I going to become a Buddhist? Is it Buddhism by stealth? You know, why is there so much mention of Buddhism, even though it's meant to be a secular practice? Or you know, I'm not quite sure where people have connected with mindfulness, but certainly in the NHS, these are really relevant questions when we're offering mindfulness training to patients and to clients. But in actual fact, you know, there's a long history in humankind's endeavors and explorations of awareness of this word mindfulness, and the Tibetans and the Buddhist practitioners particularly had a word which is called sati, which is often translated into English as mindfulness, but the language was also used in ancient Greek and Roman times. And one particular exercise, you know, begin to notice, did you choose to move your attention, or did something else happen, i.e. it moved of its own accord? And just starting to be curious about that, becoming more aware of those mental movements, irrespective of where the movement is or where it's gone to or what is the content of the thinking, what's changed, and really learning and detecting change in states of awareness and consciousness and attentional spotlight. And then this for me is really kind of why I'm interested in using mindful movement as the key training tool, because of course when we're watching and learning the moving body, we are training core brain networks that help us to detect change. And my work is really looking at this hypothesis that if we train it through the motor domain, this gives us a head start when we want to go into the more abstract realm of the mind, and we're trying to work there. So Alan Wallace calls it a voluntary evolution of consciousness. And really this is about how do we harness our brain in order to change our minds. So we imagine, or I imagine that, you know, the habits are these automatic programs and processes that are triggered in the mind, and that a lot of them just really carrying on without any awareness whatsoever. But, you know, those who are unlucky are maybe getting manifestations of how these habits are not working in the real world. And that's why they've come to mindfulness or therapy or self-development, because they're thinking, I want to do something different. And so how do we work with that? Well, we harness a faculty called attention to help us begin to examine our own minds. And so I'm going to go now into a little bit of the neuroscience and the study that underpins the model that I've been working with. I guess I could just pause here a little bit and see if anybody had any questions, if there's anything burning or not clear. I'll just pause for a wee bit, and you've got a question box there. Hi there, somebody's saying hi. So if you have a question or there's something I've said that you just went, ooh, what's that? I don't know what she's on about. Now is the time to pop a question in the question box. I'm just going to have a wee drink of my tea and pause. Okay, well, listen, the question box is there for you. So Josh is kind of keeping an eye on it for any kind of technical things. But if you have any questions, then you can just pop things in. Yes, it is a bit distracting over there when I'm trying to look at it. Oh, talk about multitasking. I can feel my anterior cingulate like shriveling. This is, yes, the joys and pains of kind of technology, right? It's not good or bad, but it's how we're using it. So let's dive into a little bit of neuroscience now and look at how we can use our brain to change our mind. And I have to say, this is the paper that's really inspired me over the last few years. Wendy Hassenkamp, awesome researcher. She's a fellow of the Mind and Life Institute. Lawrence Barcelow, also doing some very interesting work. And this was a paper published in 2012. And what they were interested in was, you know, what happens during focused meditation and what's happening around the moment where we're meditating, we're focused on an object, and then suddenly we're not there anymore. Yeah, so she calls this a fine-grained temporal analysis. Is they really went in deep using a neuroimaging technique called functional magnetic resonance imaging, and scanning people's brains while they asked them to pay attention to the breath. So they're in the scanner, they're experienced meditators, and they were asked to do a breath practice. So harness the spotlight of your attention, intend to attend to the breath, and when you notice that the mind has wandered, click a button and get back. And they were interested, you know, in what we call in the neuroscience world this kind of large-scale brain networks. And this image comes from the Wellcome Trust, and they've got loads of really cool images on their website which you can download and use. And this is an image that comes from something called DTI, diffusion tensor imaging. And it's showing the axons, which are the fibers that connect different parts of the brain together. So we have this kind of clusters of brain nuclei and neurons that are kind of bunched together. But nothing works in isolation in the brain. You know, it's all connected. Interesting. It's all connected. And actually, it's these large-scale networks that are kind of turning on and off that seem to be providing us with a bit easier method to try and understand what's happening in the brain in health and in disease, as well as, you know, during mental health crisis or problems when the thinking and the emotions are taking over and people are really distressed. And it's called the triple network model is the name that it's referred to, what I'm going to be talking about. And it seems to be implicated in what we're doing in these mindfulness practices. And guess what? Dysfunction in different parts of the network to different varying degrees are also understood to be involved in some of the more serious mental health conditions that people experience, including depression as well. So the three areas where the triple network model is really becoming interesting is in autism, in schizophrenia, psychosis, and also depression. But guess what? It's all the same stuff that's coming out when we look at the neuroimaging literature for meditation and various types of focused attention practices that we might see in meditative and contemplative traditions. So for me, this is really an exciting moment, you know, across all these fields, you know, the healthy brain, brains that are not healthy, minds that are not healthy, minds that are evolving. Actually, there seems to be this common underlying network. And this is maybe what's changing and morphing and reshaping the brain through mindfulness and meditation practices and beyond, you know, because we know that there are some people out there with really finely tuned attentional systems, monks and really experienced practitioners that have dedicated their lives to working with consciousness and training awareness. And this is such a fascinating time because we can scan these brains, we can look at them and ask them questions about their experiences. And, you know, they're telling us actually they experience the world very differently. And mainstream science is interested and not as dismissive as it used to be about these types of experiences. So it's very exciting time to be in this field. And so when we think about what's happening in a mindful moment, I mean, we are engaging the capacity, as I said, that we all have, which is to be aware of what we're doing. And it's actually something that is in our genes. It's part of our human development as Homo sapiens sapiens. You know, we have awareness, we use it all the time, it's fluctuating, we just don't really pay attention to it. Similarly, we can all, most of us, pay attention to something at some point, but it's not normally something that we investigate. It's just kind of attention is a thing that our mind does, and we move our eyes and our head around and we take in the world. But can we become aware of these processes? And not only can we become aware of them, but we need to be aware in a particular way. And this is kind of the definition of mindfulness that I'm working with at the moment, which is mindfulness is an awareness, a sort of supercharged awareness, plus three. And the three is it's an awareness that's present moment. So it's here and now and not lost in thinking and past and future. It's like what's happening now. It has this quality of non-reactivity, which is not the same as I don't care, but it's this kind of like, okay, I'm watching because I need to learn. I may not like what I see, but I know that I'm not going to learn if I just get in a drama moment and start reacting or saying poor me or get caught up in a blaming cycle. You know, this is not going to be in line with my intention to learn about myself. And similarly, it's non-judgmental. So, you know, this is the capacity that we have to choose how to relate to our experiences. Do we relate to them in a punishing, punitive, judging way? Oh, I'm so rubbish, I can't go on the breath, I'm just might as well give up meditation, I can't do meditation, I'm so rubbish. High levels of inner critic. Or can we adjust that? Can we adjust that? That's the question. And that's the exploration that people go through in a mindfulness practice. And it turns out that we can adjust this. It's more difficult for some people than for others, but we do have a choice. When we see the mind moving, when we become aware of mental and physical sensations, once we're in this relationship like this with them, where we're relating to them, we're not taken over, we're relating, we have a choice about how do we want to relate. And so fundamentally, mindfulness is about changing the relationship that we have with ourselves, our experiences. And when we start doing that at this little mini level, every 3 seconds when our breath is no longer the target of our attention and we go, oh, that's not breath, right there, can we be non-reactive, non-judgmental, and just have that commitment? No, let me see what's really going on and not get lost in the space of the mind. And so really sort of zooming in on that present moment aspect, you know, this is why we use the spotlight of attention and we pick particular objects to help us train. And we've talked about the breath previously. And now let's kind of go into another exercise where we're going to look at the exact same model, But this time we'll use another object. So just to remind you, this intention to attend to the breath on the left-hand side, very quickly becoming aware, not breath, then that awareness, oh, that's not breath, and then this commitment to, let me get back to the breath. Yeah, let me get back to that breath. That is my task in this moment. And as we're doing this, flipping between these different networks of our brain. So on the left-hand side at the top, you can see this is the attention network, and it's spread out across the front and the more posterior parts of the brain. So you can see, like, it may not be helpful to just only think of the frontal regions of the attention network, because it's densely interconnected, and the whole network is kind of engaged and disengaged and coming online and offline. So it's not just one region. There's a whole network that subserves attention and the different types of attention: focused attention, voluntary attention, the attention that is engaged when we hear a loud crash outside, boom, our mind goes. I mean, we can't really stop that, nor would we want to. You know, we need to have this alerting function, otherwise, you know, we might get into danger. But this is distinct from the attention network that we use when we choose to focus our attention on reading the newspaper, for example, where we voluntarily choose and move and shift and focus on a particular object that we're interested in. So there are these subtleties, and with a mindfulness practice, as you get more experienced, you will begin to notice, actually, there's kind of different ways that my attention moves and is captured. But often what happens is we go into this self-reflective, or what we call sometimes self-referential modes. And this is now what we call the default mode network. So you're focused on the breath, and you're attending to the breath, and you're experiencing all sorts of lovely, rich sensations of breath passing the nostril, and the temperature, and the left nostril and the right nostril. And then without really even realizing what's going on, actually you become aware, retrospectively actually, you become aware that you've been lost in thought, perhaps thinking about some emails that you need to send tomorrow, or what you're going to have for dinner, or an argument that you had with your friend before you left the house or something. And actually, where the regions you're engaging now are the regions of the default mode network, and they do include, as I mentioned before, things like the hippocampus, which is our memory region. Also, you can see number 2 there. This is a region, the mid region of the frontal lobe, that's thought to be involved when we reflect on ourselves and also the minds of others. So this is an area that's implicated in what we call theory of mind, the ability that we have to make a best guess about what's in somebody else's mind. And it's related to empathy, but there's some subtle distinctions. So it's not real when we're thinking about that. It's a simulation space. And we're not in the here and now, but we're able to kind of play with stuff in the space of the mind about ourselves, who we are, our identity. Here we can reflect, we can imagine, we can have memories, we can bring up memories that are visual or verbal, but we can get lost in there, yeah? And as we keep saying, sometimes we get lost in ways that are really nice and pleasant. Having a good old daydream or a fantasy, going to your happy place, absolutely, do it, no problem. But you are not present. Yeah, you can be present with it, but you're not fully in the here and now if you're kind of going to your happy place. And again, if you're having to go to your happy place as a way to manage a difficult experience, at a certain point, that strategy may become problematic. Yeah, maybe it's really brilliant for you, it's been working. If it's working, keep it. That's kind of my golden rule. If it's really working for you, keep it. Don't worry about mindfulness, or use mindfulness for something else, no problem. But often what people say is, well, actually, it's fine if I can go to my happy place in order to avoid feeling anxious. But what if I need to get some work done? Or what if I want to use my memory and my imagination for another task? Actually, it's occupied with me distracting myself by being in my happy place, and therefore I'm not present with what I need to be doing, which might be my work, my studies, or being with family and loved ones. So always pros and cons, not one is bad and one is good, but just how are we using these systems, and are they working for us in a way that's making the most out of this amazing brain. And, you know, I work a lot with creative people, and, you know, of course, they really want to go wild and use their imaginations. But it's hard to use your imagination if part of that whole network is clogged up with, you know, critical, negative inner dialogue, you know, ruminating about the past, worrying about the future. There's just not going to be so much space there to imagine, to create, to come up with these really amazing ideas. And then that third part of the network is called the salience network. And this is sort of the interface, I suppose, between the present moment and the default mode. It serves as a switch between these two. And this is the part of the network, I sort of imagine it as like somebody just tapping you on the shoulder and saying, hello, Tamara, you said that you wanted to be on the breath, and now I'm seeing that you're thinking about what you're going to pick up at Sainsbury's on the way home. I'm just checking, is that what you want to be thinking about now? Yeah, so it's this little alarm. And the non-reactive part of mindfulness is exactly this salience network. Yeah, can we let the alarm be there, almost like without being alarmed by it? Yeah. So a non-reactive mode would be kind of a more, I use the tone of voice to teach it, whereas I say, oh, that's not breath, rather than like, oh, that's not breath, oh gosh, no, I'm so rubbish, it's not breath. Yeah, that's reactive judgmental, yeah, response to when the salience network is activated. A more mindful, non-reactive response is kind of like, oh, wow, look at that. Wow, I've been gone, it feels like, for hours, having a good old mind wander, thinking about that, you know, argument that I had, or the report that I haven't written, or the assessment that didn't go well, or, you know, whatever it was. Wow, look at that, how lost was I? Okay, what do I want to do now? Yeah, so it's right in that moment where there's the full power of mindfulness, actually. I mean, of course, being present is great. Of course, getting the richness of the present moment and experiencing all of that, brilliant, love it, go for it. But the real power is this capacity that we can build and develop to be non-reactive and non-judgmental when things are not as we want them to be. And in a breath exercise, okay, hopefully this is just like a little things are not as you want them to be. This is just a little version of like, oh, I was supposed to be on the breath and I'm not. Okay, what do I want to do? Yeah, and if we train that over and over and over and over again, oh, that's not breath. Okay, that's okay. It's not breath. Okay, that's fine. Get back. Yeah, rather than every time going, oh, not breath. Oh, no, not breath. Again, not breath. Oh, no, I'm so rubbish. You know, just leave as promptly as possible. Yeah, because it's taking you away from where you need to be, which is back at the breath. You know, in order for you to repeat that process 5,000 times. But, you know, this is what we're talking about, yeah? Moving through and around this network as many times as you can in order to allow you to practice when the salience network taps you on the shoulder and says, hello, Tamara, you are not doing what you thought you were doing. Are you aware of that? What do you want to do about it? You want to practice that bit, because that's the bit that's really giving you the training in the non-reactivity and the non-judging. Yeah, you also want to do the present moment focusing, but if you only just focus and your mind isn't wandering at all, then you're never going to get to train your salience network. Yeah, you're never going to get to practice non-judging and non-reactivity. So I really encourage people just to not panic if they notice that the mind is wandering, but just to say, brilliant, I've seen it, you know, great, I've really seen what my mind is doing, and I'm able to kind of connect to that, and I'm able to spot its movements, and I'm just going to get more and more familiar with that the more I do it. So let's go into an exercise now, and we've talked about the breath as an object. So now I want you to use a bodily sensation as the target of your attention. So, and I've highlighted there for you that bottom on a chair, because again, your mind can do this mental time traveling, but the sensations from your butt cannot. Yes, it's not possible for you to feel your butt from when we started this call. Yeah, it's not possible for you to attend to what your bum is going to feel like when we finish the call. So if you are attending to the sensations of your bottom on the chair, you're actually allowing your focused attention to receive sensations from a part of your brain that's there to code all this information about your bum, your butt cheeks, right, sitting on the chair, the feeling of the clothes. So let's drop into that now, but do this with this model in mind. So I'll give you just 30 seconds to look at the model and know that you're going to be moving around this model. Know that you're probably not going to have your focus on the body for more than 30 seconds maybe. The mind will wander. That is the nature of minds. See if you can just clock. Is it task related? Is it not task related? Have I gone into the what if, as if, or if only? But then as promptly as you can, when the salience network activates you and says, hello, you are not where you thought you were, you get back as promptly as you can. So let's try that now. So I'll just time us, just maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I'm closing my eyes. That helps me to focus in on my body, but of course, only close your eyes if it's safe to do so. And drop your attention down to begin to sense the body and what you're sitting on. So this might include pressure and contact with the chair. Observing maybe where that starts and stops. Maybe there are some qualities of temperature. Warmth and coolness. And if you notice that the mind has wandered, just you can hold a little image of that model in mind and use it to very promptly check, well, where am I? What do I need to do? Okay, I'm over here, get back, release, drop, get back. And if you can, be alert to that moment when you go, oh, that's not breath. And right there is the application of a little bit of humor and playfulness, a gentleness, which is like, okay, it's not breath. This is what minds are like. Okay, come back, no problem. Maybe feeling now any tactile sensations of the clothes. Mind wanders, quick check. Oh, thinking about future. Okay, future mind, release, let go, come back. And finishing with 3 breaths. And on the 3rd, opening the eyes. And happy to hear from any participants. If you want to make a comment in the question box or ask any questions about that, or how was that for you? Was it helpful to use the model, or loving the mental tap on the shoulder? Yes, very good. Thank you. Yeah, nice comment. Because this is the how do we relate aspect. Yeah, so it's that moment in the top right-hand corner, and we'll sort of expand on that in a second. This is the moment where you are relating to your mind. So how do you want to do that? You know, and is it appropriate to be saying, oh, you're so bad, you're wrong, you're bad, you know, this kind of level of criticism and tone of voice? It's probably not going to be helpful, especially if you're trying to learn. And I always think, you know, if a child is learning to ride a bike, okay, you can learn some skills. Some people do like and need a little bit of discipline, you know, absolutely. That was my journey originally, was, you know, I wanted to please, I was a real people pleaser, I wanted to go harder, faster, you know, that was what drew me, of course, to Kung Fu. And at that time, if somebody had come to me and said, oh, what about being gentle and kind, I would have really reacted negatively to that and poo-pooed it. But with time, you know, understanding that there's a time and a place for both. And a little bit of firmness is helpful. Yeah, we don't want to just be milling around going, oh, everything's fine, my mind wanders, let it just wander and do whatever. No, it's not that either. You know, there's acceptance plus firmness and a commitment to get back. There's gentleness, it's okay, but also I'm doing something, you know, gentle but firm. And so having something like a little phrase, it's okay, or not now, or oh, hi, welcome, thanks for coming by, but actually I'm doing something right now, so great to see you. Wow, look at what my amazing brain has produced for me. And sometimes hard to let go of that stuff too, I have to say, particularly working again with creative people. There sometimes can be a worry, like, whoa, but if I let go of that thought, then I'm not going to remember, and I had this really amazing idea or an image, and I want to capture it, I don't want to let go of it. And, you know, I say, okay, well, if you're in your creative process, you know, go for it, you know, follow it, dive in, get right into the space of the mind. Brilliant, go for it. But if you're wanting to practice mindfulness, if you believe that you want the benefits of mindfulness, or you need them, or your mind is not helping you in other situations, then, you know, sorry, let that one go. Let it go and come back to focus on the breath. And so, you know, and so it goes, you know, repeat, repeat, repeat. But as you're doing this, you're flipping between these different networks. You're kind of exercising them. It's all, I call it like cross training for the brain, you know, like one bit is kind of the skipping and another bit is the crunches or whatever. I don't know which one is the rest one, probably the default mode network, but actually it turns out the brain's pretty active when we think it's resting. It's actually pretty busy and doing all this kind of self-relevant auditing. And nothing wrong with being in the default mode network, but choose when you're there, and, you know, don't let it take over is really sort of the message. And then particularly over in that top right-hand corner, you know, just watching out for how am I when things are not as I want them to be. So this is where we're talking about non-reactivity. How am I in a micro moment of realizing I'm thinking about cat food rather than the breath, or in a bigger moment of life, you know, realizing I've got a serious illness, or having a scare or a health scare, or meeting the inevitable suffering of life, you know, aging, sickness, and death. You know, we're so shocked when it happens to us or people we know. And that's this moment in the top right-hand corner of the model. This is the moment where your brain and your mind is going, no, I don't want it to be like this. I really don't want it to be like this. And how do we respond in that moment or react is where we're really transforming with mindfulness. And, you know, not probably time to go fully into it here, but some of my work now is exploring how we learn to relate to ourselves and our experiences, and the importance of our early developmental history and story. How did we learn to manage emotions? What did we see in our environment with our big eyes when we were looking around as a baby? Who did we meet and see in our environment, and how did they manage emotions, and what did we learn, and what was encoded in our really highly plastic brains as we were developing as young people? And then teenagers, another very important time for brain development where there's huge amounts of change. So, a reflective question that I might ask some of my clients as a preparation for mindfulness would be, what was the kind of story for you growing up? Who were your main role models? Who did you imitate? What was the emotional soup of the family? I call it the emotional soup because you're kind of immersed in it and you don't really know or recognize that. And it's only as we become adults and we visit our friends, or we meet a partner, or we discover that other people do things differently. Not only other people, but other cultures too. So, the kind of, well, a bit of a cliche, but, this kind of stereotype, let's say, of the British stiff upper lip versus this kind of very more over-emotional ways of engaging that we think of as Latin American or Mediterranean type. And so there are cultural habits around emotions and emotional expression and reactivity that are sort of just in the air all around us, and we don't even notice them. And had some hilarious discussions when I was training in Brazil last summer. We really talked about this. What is the stiff upper lip, this kind of way of relating to emotions that, it served a real purpose, through 2 world wars. This was kind of what got us through. But actually, is it working for us now? And I'm not sure about that. There's some pretty alarming statistics coming out about the incidence of depression, which will be, I think, by 2020, the biggest drain on resources as a health condition, overtaking even cardiac problems. I mean, that's just monstrous and incredible at the same time. And the rates, suicide is the biggest, unfortunately, is the biggest reason for death in men under age of 45 in the UK. I mean, I was, I work in the field, but actually I was shocked by that statistic. And one hypothesis, it's only a hypothesis, but it may be that actually this culture of the stiff upper lip, and particularly for men, is not working. It's a habit, and it's served its time, and it's not working anymore. So we apply this principle of mindfulness and say, let's look, what is going on? What is the reality here? What is the suffering? What is the emotion that's driving this? And then similarly, the other end, my Brazilian friends and colleagues just saying, well, we're like this, and we just let the emotion come. And, a colleague saying that there were some problems with the Brazilian footballers because they were being managed in European countries, and the managers were kind of shocked because it was almost a type of kind of adolescent reaction. This like allowing the emotion to just kind of come and overwhelm you. And, well, this is all speculation, of course, but my take on that is these are cultural habits, and they are available to be inspected and explored, and we can understand them, and we can relate differently, and then we can choose. Yeah, we can have a flexible way of responding. Sometimes we might need to just bite our tongue and get on. It may not be appropriate to go into your boss's office and cry. That may not be the appropriate thing to do, but can you still, at a certain level, and I think mindfulness really helps us to do that, even in those moments, can you just give yourself a nanosecond to really be okay and experience that emotion? So, yeah, so there's a question there about, do you think the stiff upper lip is eroding? Yes. But it's how it's being done, isn't it? And is it being done at this kind of deeper level, or this more kind of over-emoting level? See, neither of them is really authentic in my view, actually, because it's like, well, what is the real emotion? What is it that the person really needs to communicate? And I want to hear about that. I don't want the kind of super overindulgent, like OMG and all this. Oh, it was a nightmare. It was a trauma. It's like, well, okay, a big queue at the tube, it may be traumatic, but, you know, actually it's probably not a trauma, you know, in the same way as, you know, the experience of young people maybe in Europe at the moment in some of these more challenging situations that we're facing in our world. But I think the point is these are habits and we have choices. And mindfulness is that awareness that allows us to see that the choices are there, but also having choices is tough for some people because it forces them to think, what is important for me? How do I want to live my life? Is this moving me towards the goals that I've set for myself about how I want to be, who I want to be in the world? And that checking in with intentions, again, huge topic, you know, but sitting behind all of this model, for me then, this is my sort of extended version of that, sitting behind this whole model is, you know, for what? For what? Why am I doing this? And I think this is also what is happening in our modern mindfulness kind of movement, let's call it, is that people have forgotten that this network is being activated, engaged in the service of something. There's a bigger intention that sits behind this whole thing. I imagine it is kind of like a bath of intention, and then the model is sitting inside that. So if we realize that we're not on the breath and we're asking ourselves to disengage from a really nice bit of juicy mind wandering, maybe it's a pleasant fantasy or a daydream or something, there'll be a part of your mind that's going, yeah, but why? Why do I have to get back to the breath? What's it for? What's the point? The breath is boring. I know how to breathe. Why are you asking me to attend to the breath? This is much more interesting. I want to think, oh, it's really important that I think through now, like my personal pension plan or whatever it is, right? Why? Why are we doing it? And I really encourage my students to think this through. What's important to you? What do you want to be different? And, you know, particularly when you're asking yourself to relate in a non-reactive, non-judgmental, present moment way to some of the deeper habits, it's going to help you to know why. It's really going to help you to be able to go, actually, I'm doing this because of X or because of Y. And so sitting behind then is the intention to be gentle, is the intention to be non-reactive in the service of something bigger. Yeah, in the service of something bigger. So, and if we really want to learn and we want to move in the direction that we want to go in, when the salience network taps us on the shoulder, you know, we just want to go, oh, you've brought something to my attention. I'm going to just have a look at it and let me see what's really going on. And as you do that, again, just a reminder, these three networks switching on and off, attention, default, salience, attention, default, salience. Sometimes the full attention network is not quite activated and the default mode comes back in again. And, you know, I love it. In a way, I love it when this happens because I just think, wow, what a super mega strong habit that must be. You know you're onto something juicy if you have that experience where you can't even get back to the present moment because you're pulled away again. And, you know, this comment about this is the moment to be gentle. You know, this is the moment to be super curious, more interested, more patient, more, you know, more persistence, more patience, more gentleness, all of that, just lashings of it. Because here is where you're really going to be learning. And if we look at the literature that's coming out, mainly of Bangor University, also Oxford University, it's right in that moment, it's right there where we can be gentle with ourselves. We have the language, be gentle, be kind, self-compassion, be compassionate, be open, be accepting, all of this language that's trying to capture right in that moment how we can just go, mwah, a tiny kiss. I imagine a hug because it's got this kind of physical quality to it. That really helps my mind to think about what I'm asking myself to do. I'm giving it a hug and then I'm releasing it and I'm letting it go. This is the way that we're going to learn most quickly, you know, bottom line. And this is what's found in the results of the patients with depression. It's changes in self-compassion that seem to be underpinning the changes in their depressive symptoms. And similarly, in work with health professionals, these were like nurses and healthcare workers, healthcare assistants, changes in self-compassion mediated the changes in their perceived stress. So there's no getting around that the gentleness piece and the gentleness story, the compassion story is in there. You know, it's not just attention training. It's not just supercharged awareness. It's supercharged awareness with these qualities underpinning it. It's kind of subtle but obvious and all of these things at once, you know. And this is where people struggle. And again, your early experiences and the early things that shaped your brain are going to come into play here. So, you know, my work is across the spectrum of clinical and health and education and corporate. But you will find that some people just cannot think of what it's like to be kind to themselves. It just doesn't compute in their brains. And when they're asked to do that, they struggle and they find it really difficult. And just as when we attempt to focus our attention, what comes to our awareness is all the inattention. You know, when we start to train in mindfulness, what comes to our attention is all the mindlessness. Similarly, with the compassion piece, when we try to be gentle with ourselves, when we try to be, it's okay, don't worry, this will pass, when we try to do that, actually the first things that we meet is all the not kind, is all the judging, is all the opposite. So for those that really have a strong judging habit, or maybe had a, you know, inner critic, they have a strong early critical parent, for example, and they've internalized a voice and they're very critical, perfectionist tendencies. When you say be gentle, it feels like they're being stung with hot oil. They're just like, what are you talking about? I don't get it. It feels really uncomfortable. I don't like it. It's not good. I'm uncomfortable, all of this. So, you know, I think there is a case for caution there. But the way that I work with that is I really say, you're learning. You're learning. And what would be your optimum learning experience? Before we even start mindfulness, let's think that through. You know, how do you like to learn? What is your preferred learning method? Are you a visual learner? Are you a verbal learner? Are you a kinesthetic learner? You know, do you need pictures? Do you want videos? Do you want books? Do you need to be in a group? Do you respond well to peer pressure? Do you need somebody who's going to be a bit more directive, or you're more kind of hands-off? You know, you want high options, or you just want one thing and you told what to do? You know, curating your own mindfulness training experience is something that I'm really interested in, particularly in the secular context, where you may not have a guru, you might not be in a group, you may not have a teacher even, but you want to start doing this work. You know, so you can, as an adult, choose how would your optimum learning experience, what would it be like? And so for me, my optimum learning experience is outside, in nature, moving around. You know, I know that this is how my brain really absorbs the best information. And, you know, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have that for all our kids as well, you know, to be outside and learning and all the rest of it. Yes, and some comments coming up there as well. You know, what does it mean to be gentle, and how far removed we are in our society from this concept. It's changing. Things like the Compassion Charter, all the TED Talks on compassion, of course, the work of the Dalai Lama, just spreading love, you know, wherever he goes, and really making a strong case from the scientific literature. Matthew Ricard, his amazing story and his writings and his sharing of his knowledge. But in the West, we've lost this connection, and yes, it's not too late, I don't think, but there's some pretty hardcore habits out there that we need to look into, and I think particularly it is difficult for men. And I had one student in my class, and he said, every time you use the word gentle, I can feel my body reacting to it. And, you know, this, of course, led to an exploration of, well, you know, what does it mean to be a man? What's macho? What do men do? And how do men deal with emotions? And, you know, what is a gentle man? You know, well, actually, is that a good thing? Or would that be perceived as a negative thing? You know, we use the term, don't we? A gentleman. It is a compliment, but it's it's a man who's gentle outwardly, you know, to a woman perhaps, rather than maybe internally to their own minds and their own emotional life. So how we can help each other, you know, men and women, I suppose, and share with each other our experiences of what it means to be gentle, I think is a nice exercise. And if you're in London, I'm not sure if it's passed, but there's something at the South Bank, which is what does it mean to be a man? I think Roger Moore is one of the compares. He's leading some of these discussions about what does the modern man look like. So just to keep going a little bit, a kind of high-level summary here, really, as we're moving, you know, rapidly towards the end of the webinar. You know, here's the sort of the take-home message, as it were. You know, really developing this habit of asking, where is my mind? And using the model, if it's helpful to think, you know, well, am I here, present? Have I gone into the default mode network, wandering? Can I become aware? And then can I get back? And sort of thinking about that process, maybe as a circle, I see it as a kind of shape like on that diagram. And having a bit of that in mind, I suppose, as you go into a practice. And even just the very simple breath, not breath. Are you on the breath or not? You know, that's kind of all you really need to know. Are you feeling your bum or not? You know, are you attending to somebody's voice when you're listening to them or not? You know, and then you can go a little bit into a deeper level of understanding by some, you know, high level, and really for the purposes of learning and progress, not analysis, but learning and progress. What are the high level categories? Is this a mind that likes to go to the future? Is this a what if mind? You know, is it a what if with an anxious tone? Is it a what if with an excited tone? Either way, this is future mind. You're not in the present. Have you got a mind that's more inclined to go to the past? Yeah, the if only, the more reflective mind. And again, brilliant when you need to reflect. Yes, we should reflect on our behavior. We can check what went well, what could I do better, how did I go down in that webinar, what was good about it, what could be improved. You know, I would reflect on my experience, but not allowing this reflective, ruminative states to develop as we see in depression, because this is not helpful then. You know, this is the mind controlling you rather than you controlling the mind. And developing a bit of that attentional muscle is what we need to do. You know, if we really want to work with these deeply embedded habits, you know, a few 5-minute practices every now and again is probably not going to crack it. You know, you need to have the knowledge and the experience and the confidence. It is confidence and trust that even when something pretty massive hits you, you know you have the capacity to see it, observe it, choose to go in and think about it, choose to do something else, choose to respond rather than react. So the other question you can start to ask as well is my mind and my body in the same place? And I'd really love to ask this to people that do yoga practice, because many of them say that their bodies are in the yoga studio, but their minds are not. And this is so common. So, you know, don't even bother judging, because it's happening to many, many people and you're not alone. But to be curious, how is that happening? When does that happen? How do I slip away? How do I come back? What are these transitions between states? Yeah, and learning, you want to train yourself to detect this. I call it a mental movement, and I really understand that it's underpinned by these neurological changes as you switch from one network to the other. You know, absolutely. And whether we can sense this, are we sensing this in terms of the mental movements? Are we sensing our brains turning on and off? I mean, we don't really know. But you want to watch out for things changing. And, you know, you can maybe understand from what I've been saying that the more times you move around that model, the better. Yeah? So this is why we need to practice. And if you can practice in optimum conditions where there's not too many other distractions, in a quiet place where somebody's feeding you regularly, like maybe if you go on retreat or something, this is brilliant, right? Because you don't have to spend time, you know, kind of cooking the food and going to the supermarket and doing X, Y, and Z. You're just there for this thing. Practice. Train your mind, like that's what you're there for. Everything's totally set up. You know, this learning experience for most people would be more optimum than I'm doing a little exercise of mindfulness on the breath on the way to work in a super crowded tube. You know, the detail that you'll be able to see, the mental movements will not be as precise. Now, it may be really helpful to do a breathing exercise on the tube on the way to work, absolutely, and you can manage your state and you can settle your mind, you can orient yourself so you get to work and you're ready to go and you're not stressed and you know your boss doesn't get so annoying and you manage not to have any homicidal fantasies until after the first coffee break. But is this the same as really doing this deep learning and commitment to learning about the space of the mind? Probably not, because the intention is get to work and do a mindfulness exercise. Yes, two intentions. Whereas if you're on a retreat, the intention is train your mind, just that. Yeah, really sticking with that. So lots of options out there for people, of course, but I would just say, how are you moving around that model? You know, and can you do a little bit of thinking about learning preferences, learning experience, learning attitudes? Can you do a little bit of thinking about relationship history, relating attitudes, the emotional soup of the family? What's the stuff that you're going to meet there? And you may not have the exact idea of what it's going to be, but you can probably have a bit of a guess. You know, actually, I am a kind of striving, do more, perfectionist, you know, tendencies, and I'm going to meet this when I find that my mind is not on my breath and I've failed to keep my attention on the breath. All my stuff about feigning and achieving and striving and being perfect and not making mistakes and getting it right and people pleasing, it's all going to come out. And great, look at it, watch it, get to know it. This is the stuff that we want to kind of understand and choose when to apply it, not just let it do its thing. So I want to just show now a short video which kind of really inspires me a little bit, and I hope it does you too. So we're going to watch the video, and then I'm going to take any questions. So we're just coming up to 8:45, so there'll be an opportunity after the video if you want to ask any questions using the questions function, which is on your kind of dashboard there. But this is only a short video. I think it's maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And we tested it before, so hopefully it's going to work. And then I'll be back with you after it's finished.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic, hence neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well traveled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep traveling that road, our brains begin to use this road more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
So this, you can see here, these videos, it's a group called Sentis, and they've got loads of videos, this kind of duration. So anybody out there that's teachers or psychologists or anybody interested in this, they've got some really great videos, and you know the science content is pretty good. It's a simplified message. Oh, I'm sorry, you couldn't hear the video. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. I think I'm not sure if everybody had that problem if it's worth doing it again, because it's only 2 minutes. So maybe let me just turn up that volume there. And we'll go again with it. Let's see if that. It's only 2 minutes. But as I said, Sentis has a number of videos. Just check this.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood.
But now, oh, now is okay?
Hardwired and fixed by
Oh, sorry.
the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence, neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-traveled.
Sorry.
These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep traveling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
So hopefully you managed to hear that. But these videos are available on YouTube. As I said, they've got quite a few. There's one on emotions. There's one on the conscious and the unconscious. There's one, I think, on EQ, emotional intelligence, maybe, the limitations of the conscious mind. Really cool stuff. And great, you know, I show these videos a lot when I'm working in education to young people. And also in corporate, you know, because they're so concise messages and very accurate. And the key phrase in this one is with repeated and directed attention. Yeah, so this is the faculty of attention that underpins the whole endeavor. It's not the full story. Yeah, mindfulness is not just paying attention. It's not just increasing awareness. It's this increased awareness that's present moment, non-reactive, non-judgmental, in the service of something. But attention is the route that we really need to kind of go through to access this. And this is the muscle that we initially need to kind of train and work out, and really encouraging here, and certainly for beginners, to use the breath and to use the body and movement, these more kind of obvious present moment concrete sensations to start this training process. And, you know, maybe if there's an opportunity, we can sort of have another webinar, which is like, well, you know, what happens when we have this highly tuned, focused attentional lens, and then we want to direct this into the default mode network itself, and as they do in some spiritual practices, directing this highly tuned attentional system to awareness itself. And where do we go when we start to do these kinds of practices? The webinar, I gave a talk on this in Brazil, and I think I called it, you know, this Buzz Lightyear, you know, to the default mode network and beyond, you know, because where do we go? We don't really know from a scientific point of view. We don't really have any knowledge or hypotheses necessarily about what's happening in the brain here. But the spiritual tradition's very rich in terms of their descriptions of what can happen when we learn to attend in this way. So I'm going to pause there and see if anybody has any questions. Then we're just kind of coming up to 9 o'clock. So I hope that you found something helpful in what I was sharing with you. There was a few more slides in the deck, but I think mostly I have actually spoken about those. So I will go just to my final slide there. You will get a copy of these slides circulated, as I understand it. And so I'm just going to put this up because this shows my current book, which is Mindfulness